Well, it kind of came out of the first movie that we took all the games in this arcade and personified them as real places. So in order for the story to work, we thought it needs to feel like that these characters that we know, these two friends, needed to go to this big city, you know, from their tiny little town. So we did lots of research on server farms, you know, that house the actual internet all over the world. And they are these big crammed buildings with all this wire and computers that they kind of look like a city. You have long rows of them. They look like streets. And we thought this, you know, that we could turn this into a place that feels like a place that you could actually walk around in.
Internet es una gran ciudad donde, también hay que decirlo, no siempre el usuario, nosotros acabamos donde queremos. Cuando nos sentamos delante del ordenador o cogemos el móvil, somos un poco presos de los algoritmos, del Big Data.
So when we're using the internet, we don't always get to the place that we want to go. Are we sometimes kidnapped by the algorithms who send us to
I think
like
that
the big data send us from one to another?
Yeah, I think you just came up with the third Wreck-It Ralph. Someone gets kidnapped by an algorithm and ends up in the darknet or something. That's a pretty good idea.
Pero ¿somos realmente libres o alguien está guiando nuestros pasos desde fuera cuando estamos conectados?
But are we free to make our own choices, or is there someone who's guiding us actually when you're surfing the web?
In our movie, there's a human being in the real world moving around the little user. So the users, the ones with the little square heads, actually move like a mouse, like their heads. Their lead with their heads as if they're being controlled by a mouse, or their movements are more robotic because they're being controlled by a human being. But then the algorithms, the characters like Yes or Knows More or Shank, have free will in the internet. We call them the netizens, and they're the ones who live inside the internet.
Quería que hablásemos ahora un poco de la gran influencia que tiene internet sobre los niños, los adolescentes, los más jóvenes. ¿Creéis que están lo suficientemente protegidos de todo lo que les llega a través de la red?
So, talking about kids and younger users of the internet, do you think they're protected against everything that we see online?
Are they protected from, well, I mean, they do talk about, you know, the internet is the Wild West, you know, so I think it's kind of up to the individual. I know with my family, when my kids were young, I would kind of monitor what they were doing on the internet because, I don't think that there's internet police, you know, that are watching them. So I always made it my responsibility to make sure that they were okay when they were on the internet.
No todos los padres hacen eso, no todos se responsabilizan. ¿Creen ellos que a veces hay padres irresponsables que le echan la culpa a internet, que la utilizan como excusa para el mal comportamiento o dejar de lado la educación de sus hijos?
But not all parents are on top of their kids, and sometimes they even use the internet as an excuse for when kids maybe act out or to maybe not educate their kids enough. Is that something that you would say happens too?
I think so. I mean, I think the internet can be both a beautiful tool and one of the greatest inventions of our time, but also can be a really awful negative place if it's used improperly. And it is incumbent upon parents to pay attention to how their kids use the internet and how much time they spend on their screens. And I mean, I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I don't let them use the internet at this point at all, other than if I'm showing them something or they're maybe watching a show or something like that. Otherwise, there's no need for them to be on it at this point. That's just me, though.
Volviendo a la película, quería que habláramos un poco de la escena que va a ser la escena estrella, la más comentada de las princesas Disney. Quería que me contaran un poco cómo fue ese proceso de actualización y de liberarlas de sus clichés.
So going back to the movie and the star scene and the scene that everyone is going to be talking about, the princess scene. What was it like to make that movie? Make that scene in the movie?
It was pretty fantastic for someone who grew up loving animation and loving Disney films, because I don't think we realized just how deep we were going to get into, you know, the world of these princesses. We decided very early that we were going to try and get the original voices, the original actresses that played those characters, and we were able to get 11 of the 14 of the original voices to come back, which to me that's incredible. You know, that number one, that there's 14 princesses, and then number two, that we were able to get 11 of them back. Everyone who's still alive and well enough to perform came back to play their characters. And we got to meet them, we got to introduce them to the animation staff, artists that grew up with these characters and were inspired by their films to become animators. And here they are meeting the actresses that gave them voice. I didn't imagine when we make movies like this, you never imagine where it's going to take you, you know, on the journey. And that was a part that I could never, ever imagine that we would be facilitating, but it was awesome.
Y ya para terminar, ya que la especialidad de Ralph es demoler, es derribar, ¿qué haría Ralph si finalmente el muro de Trump se levanta?
So seeing this Ralph is he's break stuff. What would Ralph do if Trump's wall goes up in the end?
What would Ralph do if Trump's wall goes up in the end? I mean, he would wreck it.
Sí,
Clearly.
sí, sin duda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.